Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio.
Hey, good afternoon. We are at the end of August, and once again, time is just flying by. It seems like only a few months ago, Tesla was laying off people in their autonomous division, and apparently they're doing it again. Poor bastards. They're getting what happens, I think, in the automotive industry when a division releases their product too soon and it causes vehicles to drive into barricades and other vehicles and buildings and run people over and catch on fire and
can't deliver a fleet of cars without them exploding. That's pretty telling. And I think one of the biggest issues is, like, especially with full self-driving software being tested, people are basically paying to be beta testers, which is the wildest shit ever. I don't even like buying video games on release because there's usually so many bugs that it's like you should probably just wait a year until they've like figured out all the bugs with the video game before you actually buy it, because of crunch. And this has hit so many industries where the people who don't know anything about how things are done are the ones that decide the deadlines, and they stick to those deadlines. And then they say, well, why didn't you get it done? And it's like, well, this is not how long that takes. So,
You know, I was just trying to think of some AAA titles that came out that didn't have any issues. And the closest ones that I can come up with are like Flight Simulator, which had issues. And
had a ton of issues.
yeah, it really did. Ace Combat had very few issues, but it's also like it's a fairly simple arcade flyer. And it also...
But it's on its 7th iteration. Well,
it's on its 12th iteration.
Yeah, I was going to say, like...
it has...
when they don't change engines, that's like... Yeah. That's why they don't have any problems.
Yeah.
Because they're working with an engine that they already solved the problem.
It's extremely mature. And that's like one of the few titles that I can think of that only has a few bugs. And really, the bugs are limited to like people who are used to playing on a console who move over to a computer or vice versa. Or it's a controller interface limitation, like Sony's implementation of VR headset. These aren't really like, I wouldn't blame the game developer for that so much.
Well, I mean, in the scope of Ace Combat is so much smaller.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Than like a lot of other games.
In Flight Simulator.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
Ace Combat, maybe at best, concerns itself with maybe 100 square miles of very low detail terrain, whereas Flight Simulator is extreme detailed. Within the limitations of your GPU, of course. No, you're right, though. This is the kind of thing that happens because we've got everyone wants to be first still. This is still the problem. They've got to be first. They're under so much pressure to deliver something that anything is better than nothing. This can't be sustainable. They can't just keep hiring and firing entire teams, divisions of employees. And I mean, industry-wide, an entire industry can't survive if they're constantly rotating through engineers and computer scientists and whatever.
No way.
Can you imagine if
What?
Ford was bleeding like engineers like this? I mean, this is more
The
like
turnover
hemorrhaging.
isn't fast enough.
Yeah.
And the people coming out of school aren't all going to Tesla. So it's like their capacity to keep replacing those positions within the organization is limited. There's a small window.
And now that it's been revealed what their model is, why would anybody with any experience in any industry be interested in working in that kind of environment?
It's the same with Marvel and their CGI. Like the VFX complaints that have been coming out of Marvel, like people, I guess, like having stress-induced, not just heart attacks, but their bodies would start like breaking down because they were working too much, and it was like their organs would start shutting down, and it's like the crunch that these people are being put under while simultaneously not really getting monetarily compensated or reputationally compensated. Like they're not if anybody can name one VFX worker that doesn't know them and isn't like related to them or married to them that works on Marvel films, I'd be amazed. That like I feel like that person would deserve a cookie, because I'm like, you're better than. It's not that I'm like slacking on it, but they go through. There's so many people involved, and when you see the list of names that are involved with all the VFX, it's like there's no way anybody's gonna remember any of them, but they don't go to any effort to like make any of them stand out individually either. So it's like, yeah, I could like make up a name like, you know, John like Smith or some shit, and then be like, yeah, I assume somebody named John Smith probably worked on a Marvel movie in the form. I don't know that for sure.
I'm pretty sure his name was
accidentally
Joseph Smith.
be right. But that's what I mean. Like having seen like 50 Marvel properties or whatever they're up to now. I don't know how many movies and TV shows they've put out.
Well, you know they've exhausted the American
fucking one.
You know they've exhausted the American talent pool when they've started incorporating it at just every Asian name that nobody can pronounce.
Yeah,
because that's a thing now. They're definitely doing that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Well, and it's like that pool. It's funny that capitalism thinks that it can just like churn out those people and be like, yeah, we'll use these, eat these ones up and move on to the next one. Eat these, move on to the next one. Eventually it runs out of people to chew up. And we're getting to that point where Elon just can't refill his engineering crew or his lawyer team or whatever. People are like tapping out at too quick of a rate for the academic production of that. Or I don't know if they're coming from academia, from industry, whatever they're coming from. Nothing can keep up with the rate at which Tesla's hemorrhaging people and capital, apparently, because that's where like there's a liquidity crisis that's happening. I mean, we've talked about it, which is like, it's just funny to see this shit actually playing out as like early as it is, because I'm like, well, I know anybody who's listened understands, because we've been talking about this shit for like almost years at this point. But
it's been three years. 3 years. No, 3.5 years since we started the project.
But specifically calling out like all of the speculative wealth that wasn't real, that was actually going to end up in a liquidity crisis because there wasn't anything there. And then Tesla just split their stock, which is, I don't know if anybody's like looked at their stock. Whenever they split the stock, they retroactively adjust the prices to make it seem like that's what it always was. And I'm like, this is fucked up. People are in control of the information and can like just rewrite history in real time, and nobody will be the wiser in like 2 or 3 years to be like, oh yeah, Tesla did like 3 stock splits, or who knows how many at this point. But no, this is what their stock values always were. And it's like, no, they did the stock splits and intentionally dropped the value, but also it was to cover the fact that Elon just sold a bunch of fucking stock because he needs cash to be liquid in case he loses the fucking Twitter lawsuit and ends up acquiring this overvalued platform in Twitter that he was about to overpay for just to keep increasing his wealth by acquiring like overvalued assets.
Oh man. Well, you know, there's got to be something for the kind of person who likes to collect, I guess, balloons. He's like a balloon connoisseur. There's got to be at some point inflation has to, you know, go the other way. We have to experience some deflation. I wonder how those numbers work out as the economy actually stabilizes.
Yeah, that's another thing.
None of the numbers that we have right now, these are all like some weird multiplier, like instant bonus to wealth. Like some, I'm serious, some really powerful fucking dungeon master wizard motherfucker found some really fancy ass dice and enchanted the lands with some fucking instant bonus modifier to everyone's wealth. And a lot of people like this because they had, you know, sacks of gold on hand. And a lot of people were just like, oh, I've got this like tiny kernel, but hold on, now I've got a coin. I must be rich. Is this what rich is? But eventually the spell will wear off. Eventually this shit stops. And we realize, holy crap, we've invested in a horrible situation. It's like it seems like it's an all our eggs are in one basket type situation. I know that Tesla is not the only company out there developing new battery technology. Like, I'm completely aware of that. But if you were just to glance at the internet without diving too far, without actually, you know, reading enough to realize what's out there, you'd think that he was the only person like this who is single-handedly driving the development of battery technology and electric car technology.
And you would think Teslas aren't just exploding.
You wouldn't even know. You'd think it was pilot error that caused him to explode.
Yeah. On that note, there was one I just saw earlier today that got posted where the guy who was driving couldn't accelerate, and it said his battery was having, or his rear motor was having issues. And then as he was like trying to drive, I think he couldn't go more than 20 miles an hour. And then the rear motor just exploded and caught on fire. But he got out and survived. So it's not like a, you know, tragic story at the end, but it's like, this is, they're the fucking gremlin of modern vehicles, where it's like shit is just exploding.
Please tell me it was a really fancy one.
I mean, it was a Tesla Plaid, so I think it's a $60,000, if not more. Well, and I just saw this other video of like when lithium interacts with water, it like basically explodes. So I'm thinking something has happened where the Tesla's batteries are not being sealed as properly as something's happening where water's getting in them.
It's not the water so much as that they oxidize, and then I think water catalyzes the reaction at that point. It's the exposure to oxygen that really accelerates the formation of dendrites that cause the anode and cathode to touch and make the batteries explode.
I mean, but if lithium and water make contact, they explode. Like explicitly those two. But I'm saying like that's where like that it's like a violent reaction, and it's like somebody took a AA lithium battery and put it in like a 9x9 pan of water, and the pan fucking caught on fire and exploded. And it's it does not take a lot of lithium. And
no, not at all.
A lot of water to cause an extremely violent reaction. So that's where I mean, like, knowing that the Teslas are using lithium ion and seeing what's happening with them, there's something that's clear that they're not sealing the batteries, or something like you're saying something is oxidizing within the battery.
Well, it's it's directly above sodium on the periodic table, which means that it's going to have, similar, if not more violent reactions than sodium to water. It's that's actually pretty cool stuff. Holy crap, people are just rolling around on giant explosives.
Basically.
Let's go for a drive in the rain. Fuck.
Yeah, I'm definitely like cool on the Teslas.
So I'm actually really keen on Toyota's hydrogen fuel cell technology, which derives electricity from hydrogen and produces water and electricity. And of course, it would rely on hydrogen refueling stations. And currently, the range on these vehicles isn't any better than a gasoline vehicle in terms of full range, long distance. And the reason I like this is in terms of replacing a personal long range vehicle, that makes a lot of sense to me. Assuming that the cost of producing the fuel can be brought down into a manageable, something that a normal person could afford, then I think it makes sense to have the capability to have a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle, and then also like a short range or a robust urban or suburban scaled mass transit system that could rely on batteries. All of these, of course, rely on electric motors, trying to get away from gasoline still. But I also don't want to sit on a bus with like 60 people so I can drive, 2 hours. And we don't have trains back again. And I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's hard to know if it's... I mean, well, it just depends on the scale, because now that they've banned gas-powered cars or production of gas-powered cars in California, and other states are starting to follow suit, you might actually see more investment in rail infrastructure.
Yeah, except for the old, what are they called? I can't even think of the name of them right now. Like Missouri, Indiana. There's like 16 states that are all filing suit in federal court saying that this kind of allowing California to establish the emissions regulations for the country is going to negatively impact.
Just wait until they get into... I mean, the thing about that is if they succeed with that, then that's going to impact the Texas ability to influence school book production. So it's gonna be like, oh, if you want to go ahead and do that, go for it. Because
if this is
Texas is the reason.
If that's the long game, I'm all about it.
It's like, yeah, they can lose on one side or the other as far as I'm concerned. I don't give a shit, but they're gonna lose on one side or the other on that fight. And this is the problem with their short-term battle picking, is like, eventually that you can't win that fight forever specifically. And the one with the environment is like, you can't win that one either. So it's like they're either gonna lose it because the economy switches over and starts building better sustainable infrastructure, or the planet's not going to be habitable for humans any longer, and there's going to be a ton of floods. I don't care. Either one works because the Earth's going to survive. If humanity gets wiped out, that shit would be hilarious to me to get this far and then be like gas-powered cars and like the really weird desire to just go fast in a straight line is what like took down the entire civilization. Because that's where I'm like, Earth's gonna be fine. It'll grow back real quick. It'll be like 20 years before you won't even realize humans were ever here. So I'm not a misanthrope necessarily, because most humans are actually cool. Like out of the 8 billion, actually most of them are cool, because if they weren't, it would be constant fucking chaos. And like the way that the news wants you to think that the chaos is constant out, like look outside your window. If you hear this, you're fine. And the 8 billion people, yeah, it's about to be 8 billion, whether Elon tells you they're a population crisis or not. It's actually, we're coming up on 8 billion. So most of those people get along just fine. It's the individuals that have a ton of power and a disproportionate concentration of capital that want to make it seem like the world is constantly on the verge of destruction, because they'll hit the reset button if everybody else seems to be making progress and they don't like it and they don't feel like they're better than us anymore. They'll try to hit the reset button and make it seem like, oh, the entire planet, like, no, the planet will be fine. It's just humans. And that's where, if humans can't play nice, we don't fucking deserve this shit. It's funny to me that like people assume that our existence is like deserved and perpetual because we are humans. It's like if we like destroy ourselves because we can't get off of fucking gas cars, well, that's on us, man. That's on us. And it's really like I'm looking at the situation where, on the one hand, individuals can't be expected to like change all of their behaviors to fight climate change, where they've been like raised and cultured a certain way, and expecting that to change 100% is unrealistic. So I'm not expecting everybody to ever drive an electric vehicle, and that's not even really necessary for this to work. It's more so the market is what enables people to destroy the planet with their casual behaviors. And if we just take away the market's capacity for people to casually destroy the planet, well, then it's a lot less like, then people will have to work as individuals to destroy the planet. And that's where it's like, then they should get in trouble for it. If you're like working to actively destroy the planet, fine, fucking jail time, something to let you know that that's not okay. But this is where the idea of like not allowing car companies to make things that actively destroy the planet, that seems to be pretty logical in line with preserving the species. But if people make it seem like their personal choice should be able to usurp the survival of the species, then that argument would never find a logical foundation to attach to.
I mean, I don't have a problem if somebody's driving some giant ass truck, if they're hauling some like gigantic trailer full of goods and it's for some reason like they're part of the supply chain. Or if somebody is, moving a boat or a trailer of any kind. I don't have any problem with that if they're using a big truck for something like that. I don't see the need though for some like oversized vehicle as a commuter.
I mean, and even then, it's like in certain capacities, it's the failing of the infrastructure that make those things necessary in the first place. So if our infrastructure was better, we wouldn't need anybody with a fucking truck doing any of that shit.
Yeah.
But in the case where we don't have good infrastructure, yeah, it's not their fault, and they shouldn't be condemned for doing things that make everything else possible. So that's where it's like, yeah, I'm not saying that people who are in the situation where our infrastructure demands utility trucks be used, like they shouldn't be at fault for our infrastructure's failures.
Oh no!
So,
It's the same reason that we shouldn't be faulted for using a lot of electricity with GPUs for a carbon footprint when we're not in charge of how our electricity is produced.
exactly.
It's the same.
Yeah.
It's the same principle.
So it's like, and I thought about I don't know if you've seen The Good Place.
Oh, that show's great.
It is, but it's also dangerous because they introduce you to all these deep philosophical concepts and then frame it as if there's no agency, and then everyone is basically doomed to the complicit, unethical participation in capitalism, as if people being under duress then by proxy makes them complicit, and having no agency still makes them responsible. That's bullshit. And the way they constructed that is then giving capitalism a fucking pass. And it's like, that's why, like, I didn't, the last episode also really pissed me off in the sense of, like, they set up all that philosophical construction to then make it seem like if given the time, like eternity, to expand one's intellectual understanding, you get bored. That's bullshit. That's fucking capitalism once again seeping into what could have been a great philosophical fucking lesson. And then you got this dude playing fucking one goddamn video game, not even like the new, like, and then once he beat a team with the Jaguars, he's ready to go. He's ready to move on. It's like so limiting. If that's, I mean, I know for a lot of people, it was like their real first introduction to a deep dive in the history of philosophy and those concepts and how those concepts actually play out. And then for them to like only really go surface level and then basically have the super shittiest person undermine the system as like the point to prove that like ethics are like always, obviously ethics are always relative, but it's like, oh, if this person just like does enough good shit like in the last little bit, then they can make up for this entire life of bullshit. It's like all the wrong lessons. And it was like, I was reflecting on the way people consume media and how The Good Place basically made people comfortable continuing to mindlessly consume, because then they're justified because it's just built in and it's like nobody can get around it. And it's like, no, that's not even fucking true.
I really enjoyed that show because immediately after the second season, a bunch of like pop philosophy started appearing all over the internet. And you could tell that it was like really, really derivative, like super derivative, like because they're only mentioning philosophers from Good Place.
Yep, that's how you could tell it was coming.
I'm
like,
saying
it was
nobody on the internet, unless they're actively involved in like a 300-400 level philosophy course, should be talking about Kierkegaard ever.
Yeah.
Shouldn't even know who that person is until you're actually taking like a real philosophy course.
Yep. They definitely don't bring it up in 100 level, which is also why, as you're saying, like, it's not something people need to be casually introduced to. Like, they really could have really explored like some 100 level philosophy concepts over the course of the entire series. But instead, I think they tried to rush like all of undergrad philosophy and then just touched on some like highlight names from each course where you're like, oh shit, this is like more dangerous than good in the wrong audience, to the wrong audience as consumers. Like, I think probably 75 to 95% of American audiences walked away with all the wrong lessons from watching The Good Place. I would assume. And it's like mainly because then you what's her name? Kristen Bell. Like when you find out that Kristen Bell in like real life wasn't like far off from her character, where it's not a huge exaggeration, because then her and her husband are like, oh yeah, we only wash a couple times a week, we don't wash our kids. So, hold the fuck up. So you're saying you smell like you look like you smell on this show because you look like you smell disgusting based on the character you're playing, but then you go and reinforce that in real life, saying you don't shower every day. And that's when I'm like, oh God, these people are like dirty, gross, smelly people who just happen to be famous. And it's not to say, okay, someone's smell is not necessarily reflective of their attempts at hygiene, because those things aren't necessarily all like there's conditions. But when people are like, no, I don't shower every day. What?
I mean, maybe they're camping.
No. They're talking about like because this is when Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher came out and tried to like back them up. And then everybody was like, hold on, you guys stink too? You probably smell like wet dogs? Like, this is because that ruins the illusion. If you know Mila Kunis out here and not showering, like smelling like she's fucking been to a rave, it's no longer, there's no longer an illusion, bro. Like, she don't smell like cigarettes and fucking like twerking. And like, this shit does not smell good after a day of no showering. And you're sitting out here like pretending that's cool because you're rich and you think like it's cool not to shower and walk around smelling like ass. Oh my God. So many people had the illusion broken when they're out here thinking that shit is going to go over. And it's like, I don't think that their careers are necessarily dead, but when they started talking about not showering, a lot of their stock fell. And this is where like there was a whole fucking fallout within mainstream Hollywood's media talking about how often should people shower. And then I'm like, why are people even being suggested that they should listen to stars as to their hygiene methods? Like it got, I mean, it's always weird, but that specific one, I don't think that they realized how much of the illusion that breaks when people start talking about like not showering and stuff. And it's like, well, does that mean you don't go to the bathroom? Because if you're like not showering and also going to the bathroom, that ain't there's like more than smell, where I'm like, nah, bro, everybody has too much exposure to basic biology to listen to someone talk about not showering for more than 24 hours and not have a few extrapolations where you're like, this person's fucking gross. This person is gross. I can no longer look at this person and think anything but, oh, you stink. You probably stink through this. Like, it like wafts through the screen in a way. And that's where I'm like, the character she played on The Good Place looked like she smelled because she was like Arizona trash, like drinking Mountain Dew for fucking breakfast, like brushing her teeth with Mountain Dew type, you know, buys alcohol when she goes to the grocery store. Does not look like she smells nice as a character. And then when you reinforce that in the real world, that's where I'm like, there's no appearance of like celebrity or high class status at this point. It's like your husband Dax Shepard is the guy in Idiocracy that's like shitting in the fucking living room.
I'm pretty sure it's called Hot Trash.
Yeah, but her husband being a character in Idiocracy that was literally shitting in a living room, and then them talking about not showering is like,
wait, he was the guy that like when what's his name knocked on his roof, he's like, go away, I'm baiting.
Yes, those two are a pair, and that's what I mean. Like, you can't play that person in Idiocracy and that person in Good Place, and then talk about how you don't shower in real life, and not start to look like you smell like the character you play. And that's what I mean.
Especially since we know that like Terry Crews, when Terry Crews turns up, he actually is like Camacho. Like, he really is.
Yeah.
Man, Idiocracy.
Terry Crews, man. Terry Crews had one of the weirdest character arcs of all time, where you're like, went from like macho Camacho to white chicks to being like Black Lives Don't Matter, and it's like, oh man, what happened, Terry Crews?
Oh man.
I mean, he didn't say it like that, but he might as well. It was real. It was real bad.
Yeah.
Him and Zoe Kravitz, man. Zoe Kravitz fucked up her bags so bad. Like, it's crazy. Okay. There's people like her, and then Gina Carano, and then there was another one. But people who get in these positions where all they have to do is like not say anything, and they'll be set. But they decide, I'm gonna just come out and say some stupid shit and basically torpedo my own career for no reason. Where you're like, dude, nobody asked you. Why would you just come out and volunteer this information?
They must think they're Kevin Sorbo. Who seems to make a career out of putting his foot in his mouth on shit he doesn't have a dog in any race. Why is he saying shit?
Well, that's like his only career he has left anymore, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't.
That's all he's got
he does
left.
any acting anymore.
No, he shows up and says some shit about something that he shouldn't talk about. If he'd have been smart, he would have done what Lucy Lawless did and transitioned that career into like more acting. I guess he's made a bunch of like C grade USA movies.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think he tried. He just wasn't very good at it.
No. Man, when the best part of the highlight of one's career's show is a guest character who spins off into her own TV show, and then she has like considerable success as an actress.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy, actually. Let's say it like that.
Peak Sorbo produced Xena, which gave us all of Lucy Lawless. For that, we are grateful.
It's wild how much Xena had a hold on people for a couple years. That shit was a cultural phenomenon in a way that I don't know. Maybe Captain Marvel. Yeah, maybe Captain Marvel might be the only other one that came along since.
We'll see, because Xena has like withstood the test of time in terms of.
Yeah, I guess it has to stand the test of time.
Like Xena's like as potent as Ellen Ripley in a lot of ways. I mean, like a television version.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about like as far as having a cultural impact, where you're like seeing a ton of people cosplaying her, and like, yeah, you had a ton of people cosplaying Ripley in the like loader costume, so it's not like far off with that. But I think
No,
because of
Xena
Ren
strikes.
fairs.
Yeah, Xena goes much further because it taps into a whole different level of women's rights and equality and women kicking ass and stories about women that aren't just subservient or being saved by some dude who has nothing better to do except kick people's asses. Like that guy doesn't actually exist. We all have shit better to do than kick people's asses. Although in Hercules' days, that probably was like the best kind of side gig that one could aspire to. I mean, if they were built for it. But realistically, though, I'm skeptical that humans were actually. I think people are as big as they've ever been, like in terms of muscle development and a well-nourished society in like at the on the peak end of big muscle-bound people who are physically capable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think humanity's ever been as well-fed as it is right now. Also, there have never been as many people as there are right now.
Right.
And like a warrior tribe that's led by one strong man who eats everything and lets everyone else fight over everything else, they don't actually last very long. I don't think that humans would have been able to spread very far if they ate a lot either. I think there's got to be some kind of like. I think there's something different, like because of settlement and development of societies and cultivation of our civilizations, that we've changed a lot of things. My guess is that humans were probably better at walking long distances in the past, like really long distances. Like 50 miles would be nothing for a human 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 years ago. That'd be like, oh yeah, let's go for a walk. 50 miles later, this seems like a good place to take a nap.
Well, I think you're right. I think there has been a huge shift in incentives for survival, or like what our survival responses are reacting to, and it's happened in like a relatively short amount of time. So I think it's our biology is confused, our psychology is confused, and then our
all of our technology has been generated in the last 0.1% of Homo sapiens existing.
Yeah, which is wild.
0.1%, like a tenth of a percent of the time that humans have been alive, that's when all of our technology has emerged. Gunpowder was created in the last 0.05% of human history.
Yeah, and it's like gunpowder, and then powered flight, and then the microchip, and it's like that. Such a short amount of time.
1,000 years, like 1,000 years between gunpowder and spaceflight.
And then how close we get to putting our species on the brink of destruction, and how we're constantly on the edge at that point.
Oh man.
But that's also, the transition between type 0 and type 1. That's what it would look like. So I feel like
we can survive this.
Yeah.
I mean, the Earth will
and
survive.
if we can't, we don't deserve it. We don't deserve what's on the other side of that shit if we can't survive it, is what it comes down to.
God, if these assholes would just chill out, we'd all have flying cars.
Right?
Oh, fuck.
And be able to just like replicate stakes and no harm to animals.
Go anywhere we want.
Yeah. The limitation on movement is really one of the big issues that I think like people just don't. I don't know if they take it for granted or they don't care, but slow movement just makes it so much more time is wasted on transportation. Then it's like the more efficient the transportation, the less time people will be in transportation or in transit, and be doing the things that they're in transit to do. And it sounds obvious, but the way that our culture is geared towards individuals owning automobiles as signs of affluence while not having that individual sign, like signaling their affluence and that effect on their surroundings, be something that is taken into account, which is also how we get to this fucking global warming or climate change situation in the first place. It's like, you need to build your own, empire, but whatever you do to build that empire, it doesn't matter what effect it has on other people. As long as you have your empire, it could be your own little, your castle at the top of a hill, just one little place. That's fine, and whatever it takes to get there, it doesn't matter as long as you have your own.
Why does it have to be difficult to get there?
Right. Why does it have to require somebody being stepped on to get there? Is the ultimate issue.
I mean, obviously not everyone's going to go out there and chop their own trees down and build their own cabin or grind up locate and then grind up a giant deposit of gypsum and make a bunch of concrete and start building their skyscraper by themselves.
Right. And that's where I mean, like, once you realize what a person's limited to if they try to work on their own, and then what it takes to get people conscripted, it's like, yeah, people are basically limited by either their capacity to convince others to work with them or by the means in which their individual skills can be applied. And it's like, you can build a garage on your property. You'd never be able to build a skyscraper for many reasons, like whether it's like the city preventing it, or like the land sliding and moving because of rain or whatever. But there's like real actual limitations as to why you couldn't put a skyscraper in like where you live. And it's like the idea that anybody can just do anything if enough money is like present, it really occludes this, like, there's always obstacles in reality, and it's not always about the money.
I fully believe that SpaceX is going to put objects on Mars. And as to the survivability, that is yet to be determined. But I have every expectation they're going to land something on Mars. Maybe not land it. Maybe they're going to... an object will collide with Mars. Touch down. Something will touch Mars. I think they're going to actually end up giving up before anyone actually gets there. They'll decide we can't protect humans from radiation. Which is actually something that I've seen in space journalism, is they're finally talking about the dangers and exposure rates to radiation, like the moon, which is partially protected by the Earth's Van Allen belts, unlike Mars, which has no Van Allen belt.
Yeah. Based on what being in space does to the human body in such a short amount of time, and then how long it takes the body to reacclimate to a gravitational field, it's like we're clearly not meant to be in space. That's not like what we're built to do. And obviously, as we
there's like organ dysregulation and like bone mass losses, just from lack of gravity. and it's not. I don't think it's the kind of thing that can be replicated. I don't think artificial gravity by like spinning somebody on a centrifuge is the same thing as like
No, it
as
doesn't. It doesn't
gravity,
solve it.
the gravimetric effect of the mass of a planet on a human body. It's just not the same.
No, and they can like prevent some of the loss, but they can't stop it completely. And that is basically what you're saying. You just can't reproduce that level of mass effect on the body. But it just seems to be like space travel is so terrible for the body that I'm not sure that it's something that is going like with the technology we have for like the next 50 years maybe, it might just not be viable for humans to be traveling in space because of the dangers of either the radiation, the vibration, or it being like a one-way trip. So
Yeah, like once the bones start turning into goo, can they ever really come back from space and survive?
yeah,
That's pretty terrifying. You're in space for too long, and you come back, and upon re-entry, your skull starts to collapse on your brain, and
like
then you die.
that's oof. Re-entry would be so hard on their body that it's like I don't know if they would be able to survive re-entry.
Yeah.
After too long.
So much for cryostasis in pods floating around in space.
Jesus, oh my God, oof. That's a terrible idea, right?
Hey, no, that's how we transform into vestigial creatures with vestigial arms and limbs and floating brains. We just sit in a pod for long enough, and our bones turn into goo, and we just become sacks that hold a brain pod. That's how it happens. We just spend too much time in space. That's way less exciting than millions of years of selective genetic combination to produce a floating telepathic brain, space brain, though. Yeah, that just killed it for me too. Oh shit.
Well, it's like the sci-fi just has to get smarter.
Yeah.
If we can sit here and figure out like why somebody in a space pod
Just doesn't work.
mean, yeah, it just doesn't work. Then they need to figure out a way to make it work. Is what it comes down to.
Yep. Maybe
It'll make the sci-fi better for it.
Well, our spaceships obviously need to have a very small artificial singularity to replicate gravity, real gravity, like actual Earth mass gravity at a relative distance. So it'll be the size of like a grain of sand, and it'll be sufficiently massive enough that we all feel our normal Earth weight. And we'll also be able to drop little tears of antimatter at it, little vapors of antimatter, and as they approach the event horizon of our artificial black hole, they will accelerate, to the speed of light, and the radiation they emit we can harness that somehow with some kind of space radiation funnel, and we'll point it at our giant solar sails and fly around. It makes perfect sense, right? There'll be a big toroidal habitation ring it'll just be a miniature Dyson sphere that sits around the outside of the singularity. There we go. We just designed it. It's a ball with a sail and a tail. It looks like an umbrella. Man, I really want to know what spaceships look like in 1,000 years, because if they look like umbrellas, I'm going to be equally happy and amused and also kind of mad that it took that long.
I imagine like robots will be living on Mars.
Robots are already living on Mars.
No, they're not. They're not living. They're working.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
like
Okay.
living.
You mean like self-replicating and doing their own thing? Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that robot is working, and it's something where that seems a lot more possible, and also more practical to have that be like the first place to turn like self-replication loose. Like you don't want to turn that shit loose alongside humans anyway. And then if you can put it in an environment where there's no Twitter and there's no fucking racist internet, then it's less likely to develop into some racist fucking AI too. So I'm just, there's too many like racist white people or white dudes specifically that are involved in like artificial intelligence and algorithm creation, and they want to make it seem like it's apolitical. And I just don't want that shit making it to Mars, because that's when we're Starship Troopers fucking fascist.
You know, if the software is really good at doing something, but it doesn't know why it's doing it, isn't that a reflection of the person that programmed it?
That's the type of coder that doesn't use comments.
So, how can we actually... Oh, I hate that shit. Can we really call it like artificial intelligence or algorithmic? And obviously it's an algorithmic intelligence. Can we really call it even AI if it just does stuff but doesn't understand why it's doing it? Is it really intelligence at that point, or is it just...
I mean, it's the same thing with humans.
Yeah. Is it still intelligence if something can just repetitively perform a task, but they don't understand why they're doing it? And I'm not talking about some like existential, I do this so I can live type shit. But I guess that's asking people to be engineers to do mundane shit. I think it'd be pretty cool if we lived in a society where everyone was an engineer. Like, if resources and tools were available at a level where if somebody just has an idea and they would like to try it out, hey, go ahead, let's see if it works. Just iterate through everything. Like if information was shared freely, then at some point in the process, you might realize, oh crap, somebody's already tried this. Did it work? No. Let's try it a different way, and maybe we can get around this part that failed. That's the whole engineering process in a nutshell. But a whole society of engineers. God, our scholastic expectations at the like remedial levels would be so high. It would be worth it.
Yeah.
I mean, completely worth it.
Well, it's just like all the times that I wonder about the problems with America, it really just comes down to solving Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like where it's like once basic human needs are taken care of, society can move on to actual complex problems. But right now we're dealing with stupid shit every goddamn day. Because people are tasked with, on the one hand, living in an economy that forces people to work to earn money to survive, but then simultaneously will not give them a baseline like level of assistance to ensure that they shouldn't be thinking about those things. It's like they'll give their citizens some things, but it won't take out the concern for the constant struggle of knowing that you're not getting your basic needs met, whereas other countries are much better at, if someone's like jobless, the social welfare will get them in a position where they're not houseless and they're not struggling to find enough money to pay their bills or buy food. So that's not even something they ever worry about or ever stress about, because they know that their government will take care of them if they go for a period where they're unemployed or like the market doesn't see them as viable for whatever reason. And I think it's funny that people like to put it on individuals to stay relevant to the market, but then once their job starts to become irrelevant, they're like, no, we need to protect that shit. We need to get government and protect. No, we can't ban fucking gas powered cars. My job depends on it. So it's really funny to see how like Americans specifically will let people struggle on their own until their industry comes under fire and they don't have any control over it, and they lose the prospect of being able to provide for themselves and their family, and then suddenly they understand the need for help. But this is an empathy problem. Like, Americans don't have empathy in general. They see empathy as a weakness for some reason, which is hilarious to me. As like somebody who has empathy, it's funny that shit could ever be perceived as a weakness in any form. But especially from people who have such a problem identifying like what strength is, and the notion that strength is just inherently macho or being a man or something that like is identified with like masculine identity, where it's like that shit is so reductive.
You know what's funny is the things that I associate the most with that whole machismo, hyper masculine culture. I associate things like colon cancer and prostate cancer and liver problems, thyroid problems, digestive issues.
You know, it's funny you put it that way too, because I feel like, I mean, it's not just my thought. A lot of people's behavior is being directed by their gut, like indirectly and directly at various points. Like it's sometimes more direct than others, but a lot of people's gut biome is just so disgusting and polluted that it's like, well, of course they're going to behave like they are full of shit, because they're literally full of shit. Or so, but it's not just regular shit, it's like toxic shit. So when these people are like consuming all this horrible processed like sugar or
Products.
Even the meat, it's like there's different levels of meat. Some meat is way more processed than others. And when you have dyes and hormones in the food to give it the appearance of looking more like the food.
What's interesting though is like Spam is like pork, ham, salt, and water. Those are the ingredients on a can of Spam. I always thought it was
That's already sketch, because what's the difference? I mean, what's their difference between pork and ham?
I think the ham is the butt and the shoulder, and pork is like not the butt or the shoulder. I don't know. I just thought it was hilarious because it's got pig on there twice. Has twice the pig. Ham is cured, isn't it? Not all ham is cured, is it?
Not necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder about that stuff too.
Okay,
and
all ham is pork, but not all pork is ham.
Okay.
Because ham is specifically the hindquarters, as you were alluding to, but that's effectively like all squares are polygons, but not all polygons are squares.
Yeah, I can dig that. All squares are rectangles.
I mean that too.
All
That
hornets are wasps, but not all wasps are hornets. I got stung by a hornet yesterday. It hurt like hell. I shrieked. Holy crap, my arm is like swollen and itchy but numb and like tough, like just stiff. My whole left forearm is just, anytime I move it, it just feels like it's really dried out.
Yeah, man. Hornets and wasps are not to be fucked with.
Yeah,
like,
man.
It's really crazy to me.
It was
when people
huge.
like swat at them.
It was fucking
they are.
huge. I mean, like, I saw it. I like legit shrieked and then ran away from the thing after like trying to not get stung again. And my arm was on fire. And I had a pretty decent reaction. Like after about 10, 15 minutes, it stopped burning, and then I was able to resume yard work. But
I've been stung by a wasp one time, and the only thing I could compare it to is being hit with like a 2x4. That's like I cannot imagine.
I've been hit by like a fast pitch baseball in the leg, and that hurt a lot.
Right, yeah, it's like probably a baseball get hit with like a fast pitch baseball or like a 2x4 or something like that.
Oh man, it definitely was not something I want to go through again. And so I can only imagine how terrifying that must be for somebody who knows that they have like an allergy, like some kind of anaphylaxis situation.
Oh God, yeah.
Like,
because even without being allergic, it's like you like that's what I mean. Like, I'm not allergic at all, and I got stung in the head, and it was like I thought something had like fallen off the building onto my head.
Oh man!
And then only realized later what had happened, but it put me down for that entire day where I had a migraine and I couldn't see, like my vision was all white. And it was like, yeah, it was one of the worst pains I've ever had, but
like all last night, I couldn't
imagine being allergic on top of that. Jesus Christ.
All last night, I couldn't hold my arm out to like type. I basically like had it just resting on me. I called tonight at like 10 o'clock. I haven't been to bed 10 o'clock on a Saturday in 25, 30 years.
That's, I'm not surprised, man. That shit was no joke.
And it's kind of funny right now. It's like, it's not funny because some people have really serious reactions. My arm is slightly enlarged. Not much, just enough that I notice it. And it's like a completely different tone. Like the rest of my arms that have been exposed to sunlight consistently have kind of a uniform tone, but then there's this one spot on my left arm that's like kind of red, definitely kind of red, and not like and it's like kind of like a rash. It's not like a bunch of small bug bites or it's definitely not poison ivy, because I don't have the telltale signs of poison ivy, and I didn't come in contact with any of it either. and it's really mostly in the muscle. It's a very strange sensation. I mean, obviously, I don't recommend that somebody go out and find a hornet and piss it off or anything, but man, I think I managed to go 41 years, 8 months, and 27 days without ever getting stung by a hornet, and it was a good run.
Yeah. It'll remind you not to get it happen, let it happen again.
Well, shit, I didn't.
I know that for sure.
Fucking, I was just moving a
not
sapling.
like ever again, in the sense of if it's the first time, then
yeah,
it's like you didn't need a reminder, but it was a fresh
lesson.
warning.
That was a good lesson. Definitely gonna keep an eye out for that shit. Holy crap.
Well, and it's always like whenever people like swat at them or like treat them like bees, I'm like, you must not have been stung by a fucking hornet or a wasp or something. Cause
I mean,
it's just dumb.
I usually ignore them and try and keep my distance. But I was moving a piece of tree or a limb that I had cut down, and the thing just decided that I was messing with it, and I didn't know it was there. Totally would have left it alone if I had known that there was a freaking hornet chilling out in that fucking tree. Shit. I can only imagine that those... I think they're calling them something different, but the murder hornets from a couple years ago, those things are gigantic, like palm-sized hornets. I can only imagine something like that really just like knocks you out.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. I can imagine that shit probably would kill somebody. Some of them probably could kill people who aren't allergic.
Yeah.
At the wrong time.
Just get them in the wrong spot, even. It's crazy to think that there are bugs, wasps, that are like the size of a thumb, like the whole thumb, not just the part that's extending beyond the hand, but the part that goes all the way down into your palm. It's crazy to think that there is a flying insect out there that's like that size, that has a stinger that can get through every layer of flesh into muscle. It's like the size of a fang on a snake. Freaking flying hypodermic needles.
Jesus.
Now that's a really crazy power, like for a supervillain controlling flying hypodermic needles.
I mean, I saw some hummingbirds fighting earlier, and that's kind of what it looked like.
Oh man, those things are incredible. We have a mimosa tree that's a pretty decent size, and every year I can't even guess how many families of hummingbirds decide that they're going to lay claim to it, because it's basically a giant bird feeder. And once the flowers are in bloom, there are swarms of hummingbirds that just fly all over the thing. Sometimes they get into little conflicts over different areas and will chase each other around. And so obviously you can't really see individuals at first. You have to kind of stare like 100 or so yards beyond the tree. And then you start seeing everything move. Then it's easier to track them and decide which ones you want to follow for a little while. But that stuff's incredible. Like, that's the kind of stuff that when I see those UFO videos where someone's amazed that the dot that's in the sky is moving around and then it does some erratic shit, it reminds me of hummingbirds. The thing that really just amazes me is they could be flying in what appears to be full steam, and then they just stop, like on a dime. It's almost like general relativity doesn't really apply to them. Like, right. I'm serious. Like they can move with the Earth, or they can just let the Earth move away from them if they want to.
Yeah, I wonder if it had enough, like, energy stops on the way up if they can make it out of orbit.
We have to be able to fit some kind of like system to provide them oxygen. Maybe they don't need oxygen in those atmospheres. Like,
yeah, I wonder what is the smallest vehicle that could like. Well, I guess now that I think about it, people have used fucking balloons to send their phones to space. So.
yeah.
Or I guess low Earth orbit.
Well, didn't what's his name? that the Red Bull guy, Felix or whatever. Didn't he like jump out of a balloon in low orbit, or not even low orbit, like suborbital? He got really high up there. He got high enough that he could see the curve of the Earth, and it was dark out.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically wore a spacesuit to get back into a breathable atmosphere. That was pretty cool. That was a pretty cool stunt.
Yeah, that shit was pretty crazy.
I wonder where his hot air balloon landed, or if it ever came back down.
Huh. That's a good question. I wonder with a lot of that stuff, how much of it comes back down or just drifts out.
Like, we don't know where it is, but it probably landed in some like remote area of like the African continent. Nobody knows where. Nobody says anything because nobody knows where it landed. It didn't have a radar signature because it didn't have any real electronics on it. But meanwhile, complain about another country that's dropping shit in an ocean. No one complains when Red Bull drops their balloon somewhere and can't find it. I guess that's par for the course, though. Like, I see Red Bull cans. Well, I see more Red Bull cans on the side of the road than I see beer cans. Still see soda cans, but most of the cans I see on the side of the road are like energy drinks.
Yeah, it's wild to still see litter in 2022.
But why is it always energy drinks?
Yeah, it's because fucking Kyle can't keep his goddamn Monster Energy in a trash can.
I mean, even the fast food crowd seems to have like figured out how to hold on to that bag until they get to wherever they're going and throw it away inside instead of dumping it in someone's driveway. But energy drinks. It's like people don't want to have the can in the car because it reminds them that they need the energy drink, so they just get rid of it really fast, like, hide the evidence.
Well, it's like there's some weird culture with people who drink energy drinks because you see them with like Monster logo on their car and shit. Like, why would anybody put the fucking energy drink sticker on their car? But then you see these fucking idiots riding around advertising for Monster Energy without getting paid for it.
Is it like a Baja truck or a rally car?
Usually a truck, yeah. Not a Baja one though, but
I mean, like, if it was like a legit Baja racer and it said Red Bull on the side, I think that'd be pretty cool. But I mean, like an actual race truck, not somebody's like
no.
F-150 that they put up.
Yeah, that's what these are. It's like an F-150 that has no allusion to racing or any modifications other than this stupid fucking Monster Energy drink logo on the front.
They're probably getting paid to drive around with it on the side of their vehicle.
No way, because I've seen those things. Like, I know what you're talking about, and they're way bigger, and they have like it's usually at least a full panel on your vehicle to get paid. Where it's like you have to actually be able to see it, but these are just. You couldn't even tell it's Monster Energy because it's just the like 3 stripes.
Oh,
unless
that's
you
funny.
know.
No,
So
no,
that's
no.
what I
Like
mean.
I was
It's
in my
like
mind is somebody had built like a miniature billboard that they erected in the back of their truck and was driving around.
no, 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 and that's where like those vinyl pay to cover your car in vinyl. It's like that's one thing because with that, yeah, people are actually getting paid for those, which even still, it's like the amount they pay isn't really worth it. But I guess if somebody thinks it's worth it, then it's worth it for them.
Man, but like I looked into that one time, and the amount of time one must spend operating their vehicle to get paid, it doesn't cover the cost of gas and wear and tear on the vehicle.
Nope.
Like at all. Like if we're gonna work with like insurance industry's metric of like I think it's like 60 cents a mile or something like that to maintain their operational capabilities of a vehicle and fuel it, then it comes way short of that. I think that's even less. Would they actually expect people to roll around and cook their engine, waste their tires? It's like it's kind of insulting, but people do it. And maybe if they're also doing Uber and what's the DoorDash and what are the other ones?
Well, I just saw something. It looks like Uber doesn't have consistent payouts. So, say your ride costs $80, they might pay the driver $60. They might pay him $17 or $20.
Oh,
and the drivers don't have any idea to know what they're going to get paid out until after the ride's done. And I think Uber has a very short shelf life ahead. It seems like unless they start changing their practices, Uber might be done relatively soon. Well, and I know in other countries they were having a problem competing because they weren't following like the protocols associated with the taxis, which is how they were able to make it cheaper at first. But then once they had to start doing the protocols, then it was like they couldn't keep charging the same, and that's where the Uber Black and all the other extra shit came with. So they have to overcharge on one end to be able to keep up with the like regular taxi rates.
yeah, it's like 60 cents a mile for a medium-sized sedan. A small sedan is only 50 cents. A large sedan is 75 cents. So your average sedan size is about 60 cents a mile. And then a four-wheel drive SUV, 70 to 80 cents. Minivans, 65 to 70 cents a mile. And that's just for like passenger vehicles. That's not for like trucks hauling things all the time that are on a severe maintenance schedule that are being driven hard. This is based on like 15,000 mile annual driving. Man, I don't even drive that much a year. 15,000 miles. Maybe if I was commuting. Shit, that was in 2012. So it's definitely gone up.
Yeah, I think commuting adds on a lot really quick. But again, that's like if transportation was better.
And that's with modern vehicles that get like the cafe average of 40 miles per gallon. Like that's if your car is in optimal functioning and everything is working perfectly. That's as low as it costs. And that's not gonna go down. I don't think that's gonna go down once cars become even more computerized. Modularity isn't gonna make it any cheaper. I don't think.
I don't think so either. Yeah, I mean because it has to have a production infrastructure to support to make it cheap, which is theoretically why things should be cheaper. But man, I went to go get my goddamn window regulator fixed. These motherfuckers tried to charge me $1,000. to fix a fucking window regulator in a 22-year-old vehicle.
Man, I just helped Dennis replace the window regulator in his Fiat.
I ended up fixing my own, but it was like the only reason I even went is because I was busy. I don't want to have to it took me an hour to fix it. I don't want to have to take an hour out of my day to go out in the hot sun and fix this fucking thing when I drive a 22-year-old car and that should be like $100 fix.
Yeah.
And it's like I would have paid $100, but because they tried to charge me $1,000, I just bought the part for $40 and fixed it my fucking self. So that's what I mean. Like this whole country is like broken in ways that people who don't know how to fix their shit themselves then have to end up either driving around with their shit broken or finding the $1,000 to fucking pay some asshole who could have fixed it for $100 and still
they could have fixed
made
it
it
for
worth their time.
It's not like it takes that long to take a door panel off, or if you unscrew a few nuts and then shimmy the thing out. Unless it's under a lot of tension, then it can be kind of scary. But usually they don't fail like that.
No, man, they were trying to charge me $600 for the part and $400 for the labor.
Oh shit! Did they have to fly somebody from fucking England to deliver it?
You know what I'm saying? So that's what I mean. Like the whole thing was just a reminder of why I fixed the stuff in myself in the first place. But again, it was like in the middle of summer, you don't want to be doing shit outside. Like when there's actual light, it's fucking 100 degrees out. And if it's not 100 degrees, then there's no light.
And if you make your own light, you attract more bugs than if you were to deal with them during the day. Yeah, I think that's part of like my as my dad would say, it's like, well, that's part of the joy of owning a historic vehicle or a vintage vehicle. For me, it's the scavenger hunt for parts for my 27-year-old truck. There are some things that I know that the next time I buy them, I probably should buy more than one because they're getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah, I have an extra window regulator just in case the other one goes out. So I don't have to fucking order it.
Yeah. It's kind of maddening. Like we know that it's possible to manufacture products that last a long time. I think 20 years is a long time, actually.
Well, and when I took out the old one, it was like rusted, So it's like, it did what it needed to do, and the whole reason it broke is because 20 years is a fucking
20
long
years is
time.
a long time. So like we know that it's possible to build things that last a long time.
Then I looked at the way that the new one came in, and I'm like, man, this one's definitely going to last longer than the other one because it's constructed better.
Yeah.
It has better construction. It's like the same design, but the pieces clearly have better materials where you're like, oh, this probably isn't going to rust nearly as, 20 years isn't quick, but this one will probably take like 30 years to rust.
I think that's the benefit of a mature product is that over time there are improvements made to components and to materials that replace those components, the known wear components. And over time we end up with vehicles that, if maintained properly, end up being more robust and longer lasting than they were when they were brand new. But that's an issue of maintenance, and sometimes that's not in the cards. Sometimes maintenance falls outside of the framework of a budget, or sometimes it's outside of timetables. And those are complications that are not, and those are complications that are not easily resolved, because not everyone has the time or the tools or the resources to repair and maintain their own vehicle. And it's not like you can do it in a single parking space. Like a lot of that stuff.
Oh my God.
A lot of that stuff you need some working room.
Looking at some of the statistics on car ownership, yearly auto insurance for like a lot of people is up near $2,000.
Is everyone buying brand new cars or something?
Yeah, that's what it is. And a lot of them have payments that are over $1,000, and then half of all car payments are late. So then they're owing late payments on top of their car payments. So the average U.S. car payment is like almost $700, or it's over $700. It's like $712 a month, which accumulates to like $8,500 a year in fucking car payments alone.
Of like interest, right?
No. Just the payment. That wouldn't be the interest. That would be like if they made the payments on time. So with interest, it would be more than that. And that's where I mean, like, holy shit, the leasing cars is one of the biggest fucking scams. Good Lord. Whoo. I'm so glad I never got wrapped up in that.
So I think it was like a decade ago when I was at Right Res, I was considering buying a Hyundai Genesis Coupe, and I was looking at all the numbers for, you know, how much I could afford to pay per month, and then I looked at the insurance, and it turned out that the fastest way for me to pay off the car would be like the shortest loan possible, and I would end up paying something like, you know, this was a decade ago. It was going to be something like $800 something just for the monthly payment, and then my insurance was going to be just astronomical because sports car, and of course I was speccing a fancy one with everything, and I did not buy it because I didn't want to have like, you know, $1,500 a month going out to a car that I was going to be driving 2 or 3 miles a day to and from work. And then fortunately it turned out that like, because I didn't buy it, and I say fortunately because it turns out that car didn't do very well in the market. It was not well supported and had all sorts of issues. But at the time, and that was 10 years ago, I think things have changed a lot since then, or maybe they haven't.
I mean, it's probably worse now in the sense of,
yeah, it's probably a lot worse.
If you get a new car off the lot, then it's like very likely that you're overpaying.
Oh yeah,
and for something that's going to depreciate heavily.
I wonder how much of the economy is built up off of failed car loans and repossessions, and then those cars being sold a second time, and then essentially all those resources being tied up artificially by a bank.
Yeah. Well, it's weird. Like the car market is especially weird too, because of use and wear and tear bringing the value down. But then also things like now there's like a glass shortage. It's going to start affecting production.
I wonder how much glass China buys or used to buy from America, like recyclable glass. I know that glass recycling is expensive because separating the clear glass from colored glass is not cheap.
Well, I know they make a lot of it.
Yeah.
A lot of glass comes from China. A lot.
Oh, yeah.
Because whenever I worked at a glass factory warehouse, it was like one of the choices was like always whether they got Chinese or American glass company shit, and it was like a lot of people went with the Chinese, and that was significant. Just if not 50, maybe like 60% of the glass was coming from China.
A few years ago, I discovered that it's possible to buy. You know how skyscrapers have those giant panes of glass that are like 20 feet tall and 30, 40 feet wide? Like triple paned, pressure sealed, so they can withstand the pressure of an entire skyscraper above it. You can buy those on Alibaba and have them shipped to your local freight distribution center. Very, very affordably.
So I was even like, it seems like I was even being conservative. It looks like roughly 70% of glass in America's industries comes from like Chinese exports, where then the world is getting 25% of its glass from China.
Huh.
That's so much glass.
Wow. Wow. Whoa. So let's see. So 6 billion people are getting 25% of their glass from China.
Yeah, roughly. That's really crazy. That's
1.5 billion people are getting 100% of their glass from China.
Yeah. Jesus.
That's a lot of glass.
Well, it seems like it's partially because they have the longest unbroken lineage of glass making.
They've also got the Gobi Desert, which is like 100% silica, and can probably be rendered into glass very well with relative ease. You know, just incredible supply. I was reading that if climate change is not, I'm not sure if the word was averted, but if something's not done about climate change in a reasonable time frame, it's predicted that the northern regions of China, that border Mongolia, Gobi Desert, will become completely uninhabitable. Like, it'll be so hot during the day, and the temperature shift at night will be so violent that it will experience like really horrible sandstorms, and it will not be a suitable site for mineral reclamation even, because it'll be too hot. Like, so dry you just sweat it all out and dry up.
That's like there's drought in one part of the world while there's flooding in another.
Yeah.
It's like our system's completely imbalanced.
Yeah.
Like there's a flood in Pakistan where at least 1,000 people have died.
Yeah, and that's a part of the world that's so arid and dry that the ground is so dry that it gets saturated at the first few meters and then flood, because the ground can't absorb the water, because the first few layers of earth are so wet that they just don't pass water through.
Well, and it looks
nuts.
like there's 364,000 people displaced from this single flood.
Holy crap.
Like, this is insane. I guess it doesn't make it since mid-June, but that doesn't make it any better. That's not that long ago, but it's the monsoon season where they're saying it's like worse than the 2010 or 2010s.
Oh, wow.
Like, but this is again, if like people think that their individual actions don't have some impact on what's happening in Pakistan, then they're able to continue doing shit every day. It's like the wildest disconnect. So that's full circle. That's why, as much as I loved Good Place, I struggle when this type of manufactured compliance with pollution is like baked into our philosophical examinations, as if like people just don't have any agency in turning around what's happening in our environment. And clearly it's on the businesses and on the market to change things in general. But that's why it's weird to me when individuals fight corporations being banned from polluting. Like when people are fighting the ban on gas-powered cars because it infringes upon their right to own a fucking muscle car.
Well,
Like,
it'll negatively impact their abilities to. I just saw it a second ago. Where was it? Oh, it'll negatively affect the manufacturing expenses because it'll because of their restrictive gas emission standards. Wait. This is some weird logic. Because California is setting the gas emission standards, it's going to become expensive to manufacture without additional costs. This is just displacing the additional costs.
right, but it should be more expensive to pollute. It shouldn't be cheaper to pollute. And that's where that type of infrastructure where people are then put in a situation where it's more expensive to do the thing that has the worst consequences, that's a better scenario, because then if people are like acting to do that, it's like they should be fined even worse because it's easier not to pollute.
I'm just reminded of all of the pictures of lakes and rivers near cities before the establishment of the EPA, and how city skylines were essentially like China was a decade ago, where there is no skyline, it's just smog, and rivers are brown and full of death, and there is nothing there. But now we've got, people planting trees along riverfronts, and riverfront commerce exists because they've done a lot to clean up those areas, and lakes are now part of like a national network of like parks that people can utilize because they wanted a clean environment. So this is just the same thing. They're just these are like final these are the cries of a cornered animal. They can fight it, but the reality is they're going to lose. They're just trying to hold on to whatever whatever profit margins they can until they're able to exit their industry, which actually kind of makes it more nefarious. Like, if the only thing that prevents this stuff from happening is a bunch of people who are waiting to retire, that's even worse.
Yeah. I mean, the people who, I don't know if they'll get to retire though because of inflation too.
Well, we've all been promised a world where we can have a retirement where we can, draw on our pensions and spend time with our grandkids and stuff, right? Is that still part of the American dream?
Well, was there ever a shared American dream? And that's kind of like
That's a better question.
is it possible to have a shared dream in a place that is built upon the notion of individualism above all? And I think those two things become at odds in a way that was unanticipated.
Or institutional segregation, where institutional segregation exists. I mean, the census itself, I mean, it divides people into categories. Everything about the way our society keep tracks of everything categorizes and divides things. If division is fundamental to organization, other than being held under or covered by a singular umbrella, can anything actually be aligned?
Maybe on accident.
I'll take it. An accidental alignment of ideas is probably better than a system that fosters division.
Well, and I think one of the problems is the media portrays this binary model of perspective as if there's only the protagonist and the antagonist, and everyone works for one side or the other, when real life is not that binary in perspective or motive. Like, it's, as you're alluding to, it's like everybody has their own motive, which would mean that there's no real sides. It's like every person for themselves, with the fleeting appearance of alignment ever so often. Alignment is just, it's clearly temporary, but it's more fleeting than I think people identifying with political parties. Well, you seem to align, but when those people are put in the same room, you start to see those alignments quickly fall apart in more places often than not. And there's just this base level alignment that I'm not this part. I'm not a Republican. We can at least agree we're not Republicans, right? Yeah, okay, cool. And as long as there's just that at least base level of alignment, then you get a lot of people who don't actually believe in social justice or equality ended up identifying in opposition to Republicans just to play along.
We don't deserve flying cars.
No, definitely not. We can't get the cars on the ground driving correctly without running into each other or buildings, let alone in more than two dimensions.
That whole scene in Back to the Future 2 when they were getting up into the highway or whatever, highway in the sky, that was so optimistic. Like, we're way past due for that. Totally way over optimistic.
Yeah, it's like, I think the combination of predictive analytics and investment in creativity for means of profit ended up in this like homogenized place that I don't think anyone anticipated necessarily. And when we have this weird populace that is informed by homogenous media that also does not challenge their intellect, it's really easy to get to this place specifically, which is also where I think like looking to media outside of the United States, you see that it's not everywhere is not as intellectually stunted as us. Like
You just reminded me something, like the media's role in informing the public on how policy is actually made. Like most policy, well, real actionable policy is usually defined within the Overton window. But if we were to listen to the media, we would think that all of our policy decisions are guided by people who sit outside of that window.
Yeah.
And if that were true, well, I mean, to an extent it is true, because there are a lot of people who seem to be guided by their feelings and not on data. But I get the sense that people are being informed by the media, and they do believe that their extremist views or fringe views or well outside the window views are ever going to be taken seriously. And then when they're not, they're met with this kind of backlash, and they lash out. And some people go nuts and they shoot the place up, and some people just smear poo on the walls. And in both cases, they're going to go to jail. I mean, in some cases, they plotted to kidnap a governor.
Yeah.
So, obviously, the media is to blame to some extent, but also, you know, we used to have these things called tabloids, and everyone knew that they were fake. And we weren't afraid to call them tabloids. We just knew that they were for entertainment. Actually, we can probably blame the first Men in Black movie and Tommy Lee Jones for insisting that that's the only place to get real news.
Yeah.
Like,
probably reinforcing the conspiracy theorists.
yeah, just enough. I don't know, that's really optimistic. That's way too optimistic for me.
Well, in that light, there was the discovery of a planet that has a carbon dioxide atmosphere by the Webb telescope. So,
man, I love the images, but I'm really skeptical about any of the findings that are being published right off the bat, because I remember a couple of weeks ago some guy decided that the data collected by James Webb Space Telescope disproved the Big Bang. And I'm just going to say this was an astronomer, a published astronomer, a professor, and they should know better, because we have radio telescopes that can see further than any light can travel at this point.
Right, I'm not as skeptical on the carbon dioxide report because it's spectral analysis.
Yeah, that's different. But
yeah.
But I'm just taking everything with a grain of salt with James Webb stuff, because the images are great. I'm just going to wait for longer. We can make inclusive discovery based on Hubble information, because we had that telescope functioning for decades. And we can make similar conclusions on James Webb because it's a piece of advanced technology. But
no, it's because we have the data to compare against, which is why they would be able to come to that conclusion. Because this is like when we're talking about these long range telescopes, a lot of them are gathering spectral information and reconstructing it, so it's not just like a photograph. And that's where, when we're talking about a spectrum analysis that determines the composition of an atmosphere, it's because of the light spectrum that's present, and that's how they can determine like what a star is made of, or what materials are present in a star, in what likely concentrations, or if one is burning more sulfur or less sulfur or more hydrogen.
Sure.
And that's, again, it's like the telescope is allowing us to see further, but the telescope is not what is determining how it's being interpreted. So that's like, if I had not taken courses in astronomy, I would not, like, that's one of the least controversial findings ever. It's more so like what's in that atmosphere, because the atmosphere is like what's necessary for life, well, under certain conditions, where it's like that doesn't confirm anything.
Oh, sure.
It's more so like,
no, I mean, I'm just like, I'm just not gonna get too excited about anything yet, because there are a lot of people who are using this new technology to try and bolster old claims, or to push, shoddy theory, and they're trying to use advanced technology to push those theories and ideas. And I think that there's still room for a lot of peer review for a lot of these things. I guess that's me being skeptical because of all of the space journalism.
It's gone here. The thing is,
I know it's
gone through peer review if it's making it to secondary, because this is where, like, they wouldn't, science.org wouldn't be reporting it if it hadn't actually made it through some sort of peer review to get published.
I don't know, man. The guy who's trying to push the Big Bang didn't happen got into space journalism somehow. But
what journal? Like what journal?
Like space.com wrote about it. It was on like New York Times. It was not I gotta find this thing now.
Because it's the same thing with like the guy who came out and said Google's AI was sentient. Like there's certain times where like sensationalist claims will get ran by someone who's like not actually working on a project, or is like in a proximity to something. But this is not, I don't think that's anything like this. Like that's, I know what you.
Like this is one of those things that made me just like really frustrated. Let's see. I can't find this guy's name. It was so
well, and the thing is, Hubble had already found stuff in this particular place's atmosphere. So this is like confirming.
Oh yeah.
A Hubble observation. So this is not just the planet is WASP 39b, and it's a Saturn-sized planet that they had been observing because of Hubble. So that's where Hubble had found metallicity. What else? They were trying to determine if it was a solid core or a gas giant.
Eric Lerner. He published something before about it, and he tried to use James Webb's images to corroborate his theory. This guy's been like around before. This isn't his first time around the block with his claims that Big Bang didn't happen. He's just going about it a really weird way.
Yeah, when individuals publish something, it's way different than when the reports are coming out of like NASA.
Yeah,
or is an individual just claims something that's not even a publication.
No, I mean he's an astronomer.
But his claims weren't published, is what I'm saying. Like an astronomer claiming something is not the same as those claims being published in a peer-reviewed publication, because then like space.com isn't a peer-reviewed organ. Like that's not qualifying as peer review, or science.org doesn't qualify as peer review. They referenced a peer review article that's in like an actual journal, and that's where I mean like this is coming out in Nature, the journal. It's in preprint, but it's going the actual science journal is going to appear in as Nature, but science.org.
Sure. No, that's why it's frustrating, is because people who found the internet are able to report or able to publish shit like this.
Exceptional Radio.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional.